Hi everybody, welcome to Raising Vibrations and welcome to another video. In today's video, I want to be talking about how astrology can be used as a healing tool. And one of the things that I feel deeply encouraged about with the subject is that not only from my own direct experience, but also through the work that I do and the excitement and imagination that comes through when investigating and experiencing and participating in this form of art has brought me, the wonder and the experiences that have shown me time and time again how powerful something like astrology can do. So one of the things that was really interesting about this the subject for this video was that through the time that I've been working with souls that are seeking some form of understanding about their lives and the events that have occurred, is that there's always been one common theme, and that is why. Like, why are these things happening? What is the purpose behind it? And one of the things that I think is essential to this question is our desire to not feel as if it is for nothing. One of these big reasons. I know in my own personal chart as well, there is a curiosity around wanting to understand the deeper complexes that exist within our psyche. And this is a Scorpio phenomena. And I think that it really brings human beings to a point of understanding this emotional connection, this identity connection to the physical and to the phenomena of reality. And I think that it's been around for as long as we have probably existed, for this quest to understand ourselves. And so we ask these questions. And naturally speaking, through understanding our relationship to the phenomena of reality, we've begun to answer this in some way, or at least form a relationship to this phenomena, and to try to understand it from the place of, wow, it seems really, really complex. We are immensely vast in our interaction with this cosmos. And yet at the same time, we are also very limited in our abilities to interact with it as well. The human body in itself has its own personal limitations, yet our imagination, Pisces, can really stretch as far as much as we are able to do that, to be honest. So it brings me to an interesting point around what I would like to use this video as a tool for helping those that have just entered this world, entered this world of discovering astrology, trying to figure things out about their lives that there hasn't been any opportunity before. The questions that you're seeking simply have not been answered yet, and so you're trying this avenue out, and this video kind of provides you with a source of inspiration to investigate deeper, or to allow yourself the understanding and the footing as well as the foundation for what you're about to embark on. That being said as well, what has also sparked my interest around this is how this is related to my own personal life and my own personal journey of what I've tried to figure out and try to heal with inside of myself and try to understand with inside of myself. And so I'd like to share that with you today as well. I have a quote, actually, before I jump onto that, I have a quote from one of my favorite astrologers, and I'll just see if, there it is over there. It's Dane Udra, and he had said that the essential purpose of astrology is not so much to tell us what we will meet on our road, as it is to suggest how to meet it, and the basic reason for the meeting, which quality in us which type of strength is needed to go through any specific phase of our total unfoldment as an individual person. And what I find really, really beautiful about this post, about this quote, about his statement here, is that, before we can begin to understand astrology at a level that can offer us the profound healing that we could be seeking, we need to understand what our relationship to the cosmos is and what our relationship to astrology is. And I think that once we get this core fundamental understanding under our identity, or should I say under our awareness, pardon me, then we begin to make more sense of what type of healing we can actually get. So that being said, the essential purpose of astrology is not to tell us what we will meet on our road. So yes, we have used astrology to predict in the future, or to the future. We've used astrology, and it can be a great tool to understand upcoming events in our lives, and we can be prepared for that. And that's one way for us to recognize what certain aspects and transits and events could be coming our way. But in order for us to truly grasp the nature of what that is, surely we would need to have some basic understanding of what the journey is about, because then it's always about relatability. Otherwise, it can be infinite potential, infinite experiences. And really, at the end of the day, it's pretty much going to be coming through the scope of what your original desire was about. And that's why I personally like evolutionary astrology as a way to understand that core intention, because it focuses deeply on the relationship that we have as human beings to the soul. So once we kind of form that understanding, once we begin to develop that conscious awareness around these deeper dynamics, then we can see how looking at upcoming transits and progressions and solar arcs can provide us with feedback around what potential cycles are about to unfold for the ongoing evolutionary journey of the soul, right? You see it. Another way, in terms of how I like to interact with this as well, is that astrology in itself does not enact life, it merely reflects it. And I think it's a really profound thing to contemplate the nature of, because when we recognize this process of reflection, then we will see that there is, from my point of view at least, a holisticness, an integration and unifying of archetypal expressions that we are a part of. And I think that it's very simple to get an intellectual understanding of what I'm sharing. But in order for us to truly grasp that at the level that is beautiful, as well as soothing, as well as inspiring, we need to contemplate the feeling. We need to connect with that feeling. We need to see it in our lives. We need to see it in nature. And so what I like about astrology, and specifically EA, again, simply is because the lens at which we use the archetypes through are reflections in nature. Okay, and we are a part of that. The psychological approach is something we integrate because that is an aspect of our nature that would be, say, for instance, different to the plant or to an animal, as an example, because there are our context within the context of nature in itself carries that element that is unique to us in that sense. So that's where we would apply the more personality trait dynamics, right? But yet fundamentally, these archetypes are still found everywhere and anywhere. So for instance, if you look at the human body, okay, and you observe your skin, that is the sign of Capricorn. That is the archetype of Capricorn. Just as the bark on the tree, just as the layering of hardness around a plant or a stem, just as the shell on a crab, just as the brick wall that you use to protect yourself from the elements in your home. What is the key underlying context or underlying theme that is linked with all of the things that I've shared with you? See if you can guess it, okay, with all these things that I've shared with you. Boundaries, protection, Capricorn is the nature of protection and boundaries within the context of nature. And so when you observe the opposite sign of Capricorn in the charts, you'll actually come across the nature of Cancer, the archetype of Cancer. So what is needing protection? What is needing boundaries? What manifests naturally out of the context of boundaries and protection? Well, safety, security, alignment, reflection, nourishment, nurture, something valuable, something squishy, right? Think about all the things that I've shared with you right now and look at all the examples I gave with you earlier. The inside of your body definitely is not some formed hard rock piece. It's very valuable, okay? It's very squishy. Just as the tree trunk and the bark protects it, inside there is this, it's not necessarily as soft, but if you were to peel away smaller layers of the trees, the middle of the tree, you would notice that there's actually pretty soft, the wood there, okay? The same with the crab inside the crab, same as our body, same as the valuables in your home. Think about the context of when you are living inside, when you're in your home and somebody that you feel, or that you've never met in your life just comes into your house and starts sitting down. Immediately you're not going to feel embracing and warming to this process because it's pushing the boundaries of what you feel safe and comfortable with. So think about the context of Capricorn and definition in your own astrology charts, and then think about the context of all the other archetypal symbols that play out in your chart. And I invite you to look at your astrology chart as something that reflects the context of the different energies and variables that exist within your life that make up the fundamental essence of your reality. For instance, if you've got, say, Pluto squaring your Saturn, I ask you the question, do you feel at some level inside of yourself a deep sense of empowerment around how you assert your boundaries? Do you feel that you've had to grow up in this lifetime or recognize limitations around where you have restriction or within yourself? Do you recognize your emotional safety and security, as an example? Think about the context of what those symbols are reflecting in part of your own inner journey, which brings me to the next part of this, right? So the essential purpose of astrology is not so much to tell us what we'll meet on our road, right, as it is to suggest how to meet it. So think about the context of our spirituality. I feel like this is a really great opportunity to take spirituality and ground it into something that allows us to not only practically interact with it, but also to be receptive to the idea that there is a lot of experiences and projections and ideals and definitions out there that have put spirituality in the category of something new age, or that it's woo-ha, etc. Unfortunately, part of that process is that the journey inward to recognize the deeper meaning of your existence does not come through one lifetime of realization. There are progressive lives that you must exist through in order to break the veil of illusion between your self, the soul, creating this life, and that the ego being a representation of the physical form that is anchored in this material plane, and the relationship to the senses that we have and how we are experiencing the sensations and impulses relative to this journey. And that the interplay between the personal boundary identity structure that we identify with here in this physical realm and the spiritual, or should I say something that's transpersonal and nonlinear, that interplay within each other can be difficult to understand, let alone live with complete alignment. So spirituality and astrology and a lot of tools that are inviting us to exit the realm of something physical and enter a realm of non-physical can and will lead to a great deal of misunderstanding, confusion, rejection, skepticism. And so part of the deal is needing to work through the confusion that arises when transitioning from a part of your sort of ego self to something spiritual. And so the invitation is, oh, there is an inward journey. There is an inner sense of self that is wanting to becoming or wanting to be brought into the physical form as an expression of true transparency, i.e. soul and ego are aligned through transparency. That being said, what we meet on our road, what we meet on our journey is an invitation to deepen and to open the relationship between ego and higher self, or ego and spiritual self, or ego in non-physical self. So how do we meet our journey depends primarily on our relationship that the ego has to the inner journey, which of course for many people, including myself, can be a very challenging process at times, because again, at the end of the day, we as a human race have not had the integration over the most recent maybe 1,000 years or so of spiritual teachers on a collective level that has allowed us to initiate the younger self or the younger parts of ourselves, so think of when you were 14, 15, into the process of what life is about. So we've kind of lost ourselves through our distractions and in the darkness. And we're kind of slowly but surely finding our way back to the essence of us, but that will take some time. And unfortunately, part of that process is recognizing some of the woundedness that has occurred during the darkness that we have experienced and the lostness that we've endured and how we are trying to find our way back. So the point here is that each time that we meet our journey and our path, sometimes we can actually not know it is our path, because what we are meeting it with is not necessarily something met with clarity or awareness. So the healing aspect of astrology, and the reason why we seek astrologers and we watch this video and we watch all the other videos that are done from other astrologers, is that on some deep level there's a searching. Whether that searching is done inwardly or existentially is a different question, and for a whole probably another new topic of conversation. But that being said, how to meet it and the basic reason for the meeting. So again, we can sit with this process of, okay, you're going off on a tangent about all these different things. What do you mean about the healing process? Well, I think that it's an invitation for us to recognize that everything within the context of astrology is reflecting stories to us, and we're engaging in that. And as we engage in that, the process of what nature and life is about is also being deeply revealed. So this is the second part of one of the things that is essential to understand about using astrology and awakening's a spiritual journey as a tool of healing. And that is that, like I said, everything is connected through nature. And we have this sort of cycle-orientated dynamic. Each of us has a place within ourselves that has a different time frame to another person. And we, through a Saturn reality, have created a linear process of time that we connect with, that allows us to, on some level, find consistency, and that consistency reinforces a sense of safety because it's something that we can expect. However, the limitation within that context is that it leads us to reoccurring patterns of behavior that ultimately don't really stimulate a deeper inner growth process that is different to the time frames that have been created from external structures or an external world, or an outer sense of self that we engage with. So let me be clearer about this. Many of you that are watching this video right now have, at least at some point in your life, gone to the schooling system. And you've known that at some point, having to go to school meant doing something that your body might have not wanted to do at the time that you should have or should be doing something. And so by trying to get yourself interacting with something that you at a soul level or an emotional level are not ready for, or feeling not up to that day, yet this outside expectation that is there is demanding your attention, even if it's not available to yourself. So there's this frequency, this inner relationship to time that we've kind of lost because of our separation from nature and its natural law and its teachings that haven't been passed down from generation to generations through the elders. So what we find here is a searching aspect of ourselves, and yet what we don't seem to know that is also a part of the searching thing is that there is a need for passing down wisdom through time because of life being a process of constant development. And knowing these deeper laws, these deeper natural laws, can help us awaken deeper parts of ourselves. But we are limited literally by our capacity to know these laws. So part of this process is understanding the natural laws that exist within the context of life and the cyclical nature. And one of them is recognizing that each of our journeys has a specific time frame that get awakened and get activated at different times. And this is what you can use astrology transits for. Say, for instance, you've got, like in my case, which I want to share with you, I have Uranus transiting it's actually on the cusp, right? So for you that are not aware of the word cusp, the cusp is where one house on an astrology chart meets with another house. So generally the word cusp is used when the ending of the fourth house, for instance, is occurring, and the cusp of the fifth house, meaning the starting of the fifth house, right? Where the division line gets created, where the fifth house energy is starting to occur. So this process of Uranus is actually transiting the cusp of my fourth house. And within the context of my life right now, what those symbols mean, this is a really, really big point of soul activation for me. And recognizing that path can allow me to meet this part of my path in a way that not only can be deeply digested, processed, and nourished, but also observed from a space that can awaken a deeper realization and awareness and feeling of soul and its path. Okay, getting more into context with self and getting aligned with ego and how I can serve that's overall journey. And so right now, this is a big time for me, with other transits that are going on. And again, I'll share that with you. And that's the point here. It's like, how to meet it, and what the basic meeting for that whole entire process was about. So we have these different cycles, and recognizing these different cycles when we compare to the outside expectations of what we are supposed to do or supposed to be can help us relax into knowing that maybe you internalize that you're in the wrong place, or you feel like you're not fulfilling your purpose, or you add extra stress to yourself where there doesn't need to be stress. Because when we define our sense of fulfillment or validation of purpose through an existential expectation of where we are supposed to be versus where the soul is, we're always going to miss the actual essence of true awakening. Because at the end of the day, when you leave this plane, you don't leave with your doctor papers or your PhD papers or your accomplishments regarding how humanity's defined your sense of self-worth. It's not about that. You leave with the emotional imprints relative to the soul's growth and the integration that was occurring during that period of time. And those ongoing desires, whether they are fulfilled or not, is really the causal factor for the next lifetime and its incarnation. You know, when you study the Eastern philosophy deeply, you'll know that part of the process of dying is the soul and its astral body disintegrating, and that the formation of the astral body and of course the soul, and when it eventually gets to a point of coming back onto earth, will gather all of the unresolved desires and things that were not sort of done prior to this life, and so therefore it will initiate a sequence of events in order for you to go through and to emotionally interact with. And part of that process is knowing that when we choose to define our fulfillment in a way that is not that is more about the personal earthly success, materialism, it almost dissolves you into nothing, because it literally does become nothing. The emotional imprints of what was not accomplished remain with the soul, because those were the original contracts, and those experiences may be met, and there could be a repression or a denial or a non-awareness of this process. Okay. One of the pictures that I wanted to share with you, actually as a part of this thing, was this over here. And this is a really interesting thing, because it's almost, what it does is it captures our understanding of this whole process of cycles and how astrology can be used as a tool to heal us. What I find interesting is that if you observe the circle with the four quadrants, you notice that your astrology chart has got these four quadrants: the ascendant, the MC, the IC, and the DC. And you'll notice that there are these four main seasons that we have within our world, okay? Not necessarily felt equally all over the world, but we have a process or a transition from winter to spring, and then from spring to summer, and then from summer to autumn and winter, and we go around the circle. And you also notice that we've created time regarding these things as well. And what is also interesting is that our astrology chart has a very similar reference to that. Think about the moon going around the sun, right, or around the earth once a month. Think about when we have a new moon, and think about what happens when we have a full moon. Watch that dial occurring there, and as soon as it hits this point right now, that's a new moon, full moon, completion, new moon. That's what's happening every single month. Think of where the sun enters Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, Libra, Capricorn, and it's going around like this, right? So that, now let's transition this for you guys that are watching again. When that dial hits the 9 o'clock position over there, think of that as the sun entering Aries, goes right around the whole entire zodiac, and it's entering Pisces, and now it's going to hit Aries again. Now observe the line that it is creating relative to that movement. Can you see that we have this non-linear form of time that is materializing from the soul's perspective, and that in human form we measure that through the astrology chart and the cyclical nature of how these planets are moving around each other? And what we get to do is see that they're from these different dimensions, the way that we interact with this, that what we appear or what we see as time going from when I was born up until the age of 7 and so on and so forth, that's kind of like a straight line in that way. But really from the soul's perspective, it's like the Fibonacci sequence. It's an unfolding, and that's what my next picture is actually about. It's an unfolding process of your whole entire life reaching the maximum point and then recurring back into the descent again. So we open up with our lives and we experience our early life conditioning, we reach a point in which we are maybe like 38 or something, and we're fully into this process of our lives. We're standing up straight, we're experiencing and processing the nature of this existence and this trajectory and where we're heading and what we're supposed to see, and we're gathering information and it's imprinting on us. And so what astrology can do is it can help us watch this process unfold in a natural and organic way and allow us to meet that story in a way that not only, well, that can do many things for us, you know, and depending on how you choose to interact with this will be your specific vision. And part of the healing journey can help you process the deeper complications and stories that are naturally occurring during that time. Like, for instance, I take one person that has Neptune conjunct the South Node in Scorpio. Now, unfortunately, part of this soul's journey has had to experience quite a lot of powerlessness, Scorpio, and violations of trust and boundaries, and the experience of complete surrender. Neptune, Scorpio, South Node, prior life dynamics in which the soul has experienced these types of dynamics. And so, but also, ironically, found healing in the very symbols that are also associated with that. And Neptune and Scorpio, again, regeneration, right? So the point here is that these symbols, when seen from this process of unfolding, and the other picture that I was showing you over here, and the cyclical nature, the soul can come into this lifetime and then has emotional wounding that it carries from early life environments and early life experiences in which this has happened. And you can go ahead and look at that symbolism over there and understand that, unfortunately, part of the soul's journey prior to this was in these types of experiences. And from there, it gives us a starting point in which we can then interact with it in any way that we can. One of the major reasons as to why we can heal from this is to recognize that whatever the complications and dynamics that were linked with that over there have occurred, and if we accept responsibility for our wounds, i.e. we recognize that this is a part of ourselves that is unfortunately damaged due to the nature of existence for life and so on and so forth, we can begin a healing journey in relationship to that. We can also become recognizing of certain dynamics within the context of our lives that are healthy for us and not healthy for us. Like for me, as an example, actually, if it's okay with you, I'll just go over to my chart and share it over there. There we go. There's my astrology chart. And if you have a look where my Uranus is sitting, it's at 7 degrees Sagittarius, right at the 11 o'clock position. I've got Jupiter, South Node, and Neptune there as well. My Uranus actually squares my Venus and my Mars. And one of the dynamics that exists within inside of myself is that I noticed that when that Uranian energy comes through my Mars and Venus, there's a deep, deep sort of uncomfortability around feeling restricted and needing freedom to break through psychological patterns of feelings of sort of guilt or feelings of internalized persecution, right? Criticism, etc. That Uranus over there is literally saying to me that in this lifetime, the soul's desire is to liberate Uranus from pre-existing patterns, Uranus, because something that must be liberated from is always in context of something that was pre-existing, from pre-existing patterns linked with belief systems, Uranus and Sagittarius, okay, that are directly related to the inner and outer relationship of the personality, Mars-Venus, okay? Now, before I met Evolutionary Astrology, I literally experienced the karmic dynamics of what those symbols were like. I felt deeply, deeply traumatized and internally fragmented due to cycles of I don't know how to describe that Mars Venus over there, but it was essential like fragmentation of the inner sense of self. My step parents and parents in their own different way within their environments, which I exist within, in plus in school, etc. I operate in a different way. I have a deep intuitive way of relating to things. It's my individuality, Uranus, and yet the context of logical sequencing was something that wasn't developed within inside of myself. So naturally speaking, in a world that requires you to be all left-brained with so much rightness over there, I would experience a lot of criticism or judgment, or statements being said that I internalize as rejection. And so emotionally, I carry a lot of like emotional brokenness around feeling 110% emotionally safe when, say, for instance, I get something wrong. In fact, that's the reason why you'll notice in my videos, I pretty much don't do any editing. And I pretty much sit here and I talk to everybody like this, because a part of me feels that in order to heal that dynamic, I want to expose myself to just being as free as possible, Uranus, to self-expression. And if I make a mistake, or if I say something that's not right, that's immediately going to reinforce to me a need to break away from the emotional dynamics, as if there's something wrong or I should atone for that. But just to go, look, I'm a human being. It's like, it's okay. I want to be free and not feel like I have to run according to some sort of strict way of doing things in order for me to create the emotional dynamic of, oh, okay, I didn't do it right, so therefore there's something wrong with me, versus going, no, actually, this is quite okay with me. And if it doesn't come across as if it's all professional in that sense, then that's fine. But I definitely feel comfortable in being able to get something wrong or say something that might not necessarily be 100% clear and be like, oh, okay, cool. Because it invites me to meet that journey of the soul wanting to break free from those karmic complexes and heal through realizing that at the end of the day, it's about self empathy and self compassion. It's about turning to myself and saying, okay, yeah, so that was wrong over there. Cool. This is what I would feel like to adjust it. Or, oh, look, I remember one video I did right in the beginning, right in the beginning of Raising Vibrations. I was doing a video, I think, on one of the astrology archetypes. Maybe it was actually Aquarius. I have to share this story with you. It's Aquarius, ironically. My rising sign's Aquarius. So I did a video on Aquarius, and I got a sneeze, and I sneezed during the video, and I didn't edit it. And at that point in time, the psychology of what I'm sharing with you right now was not the same. So I did actually want to like edit that out, but I had kind of forgotten about that. So I just uploaded the video, and then about, I think, 3 months or 4 months later, I watched the video again, and I noticed that, and my whole entire face. I'm the only person watching the video with nobody around me over here. Why would I need to get embarrassed? But I got embarrassed. My whole face just went like, oh my God, how could I even do that? It's like, how would that work? And I took it down. And I think I received, not lying to you, at least 50 emails over the session of about 3 years of people saying to me, hey dude, you've got all these videos here, but where's Aquarius? And I'm like, yeah, I get to it. You can actually go and see, and that playlist called Learn Astrology, all the astrology ones are like this, and then the Aquarius one, ironically, completely unique, has its own video that is completely in a different time frame. And it's like, wow, if it wasn't a beautiful way to see the Aquarius archetype, then I don't know what is, because not only was it recorded in a different time, Aquarius, different time, the nature of it being individual is there as well, and the context of my own emotional relationship to that, being Aquarius rising, in the sense of wanting to break free from that. It's like, it was so random. And it was poetry, because it was like, there was just a beautiful way to not only recognize how the astrology is moving through us and it's reflecting us, but it's also our human interaction with it, and that it's real and you can see it. All you have to do is just open up your eyes to see it. But the process of opening up your eyes can be something that is not necessarily that simple, and it requires direct experience. And of course, when your mind is conditioned to reject those things because you ironically have a Jupiter retrograde in your chart, or Mercury retrograde, then it's a way of, or a process of just having to be excited at the fact that you can see those dynamics occurring, and that they're always in here. And I joke with a lot of my students when I teach astrology, which, by the way, there is an actual class that is, if you want to learn astrology, and I want to get onto teaching astrology as something that's not about teaching astrology in the way that we think we should be doing it, and I'll get onto that tangent. But on the 11th of January, March, I'm teaching astrology class, and plurals. And so if you're interested in that, send me an email, say, hey, I'm interested in wanting to participate in your classes, or in the link below, or in the description below, there's a link to actually sign up for that. I also wanted to let everybody know, kind of segue over here, between the 22nd of March and the 25th of March, there is an astrology conference called NORWAC in Seattle, which is coming up just recently. And I've been invited to go and do 2 lectures over there. One of them, the evolutionary role of the sun, the evolutionary astrology's, what is the meaning of the sun in evolutionary astrology, and the transition from the Saturn to Uranian cycles. So I'm super excited to actually be traveling to the States, and yeah, it's going to be super, super fun. I haven't been there before, so, and it's Seattle as well. So thank you very much for all of your support regarding watching these videos and allowing me to actually, share astrology in this way, to be recognized and to be invited to that, by the way, just to kind of move off on a different tangent over there. But coming back to this thing about working with astrology and it being a healing tool and studying the astrology. So I've lost my original thoughts while I was sharing that over there, but it will come back to me. But what I wanted to say was that, okay, so let's say you want to study astrology, right? You want to enter this process of learning it. What are your desire nature? What is the desire nature around it? Do you want to do it because you want to read people's charts and become a professional astrologer and earn money? That's an okay thing, to be honest. I would say that it would be deeply, deeply helpful to you to see that learning the language is an invitation to know yourself. And part of that process is beginning a journey of self-understanding and self-realization, and that being also connected to this whole thing I was talking about with Uranus squaring my Mars and Venus, because when I became aware of EA and I started understanding the context of what it was teaching about and accessing these memory pools that the soul carries and seeing it in my life, like actually seeing the astrology like I was sharing with you, I've got that thread back again, seeing it in your life, it brought a deep, profound healing. And part of that process was me becoming aware that this is something that I'm called to do. Because not only was that experience life-changing for me, it allowed me to feel like I have to share this. And that's part of my Mars and Venus, right? It's in the 8th house of the astrology chart and it's in Virgo. So it's an invitation to share my unique values relative to my feelings of empowerment, 8th house, and how those relate to self-improvement, Virgo. And that when they connect to Uranus, then that square over there, all in the 11th house Sagittarius, it's like broadcasted to the people. Broadcasted, say, hey, like, this is an amazing tool that can be used to heal ourselves if we see it in that light. And again, the context and the focus of this conversation today is pretty much trying to inspire that process. And, for most of you that are watching this video, you are doing that. However, adding to that process is also coming to this point of why you would want to learn it. And are you doing it because you would like to learn how transits operate so that you can predict things and then you could make decisions to influence your life? Because on some level, one of the major reasons as to why I have that picture over there on the left-hand side, and also, let me go back to it and see if it's working there again with Daniel Jar's sort of quote, is that these cycles are going to be occurring for us. The soul's journey is unfolding for you already, and it's about becoming aware of that process and being patient with that process and waiting for those soul activation moments to occur, versus we trying to fill in the blanks to tell us where we need to be and missing the whole entire story. Well, we're not going to necessarily miss the story. We're going to be kind of frustrated with the fact that life is getting in the way, whereas actually life is not getting in the way at all. It's actually showing you the way. So the irony of the situation is that if we are to use this work and this language and this intuitive guidance system as a way to deepen our connection to how life is unfolding through us, we are invited to see a beautiful path illuminate where we can meet it with our strongest qualities and understanding how those qualities are working. For instance, my sun sign is Scorpio. And a personal story with you today, just how I'd mentioned I was traveling to the States, is that I needed to get my sort of visa done. And for those of you that don't know, I originally come from South Africa, and I left South Africa 13 years ago to travel to this part of the world. One of the major reasons why that had been the case was because of some karmic dynamics that were taking place, right? Anyway, so 13 years on the 5th of June, 13 years ago, I'd traveled from South Africa. Just hold on. And I started to develop my life here in the UK. That's where I originally started off, living in the UK for 5 years, and then moved to Sweden in 2010. And that whole entire journey has been the process of me. And you know how if we go to my astrology chart, let's go up here again. Can you see the South Node and Jupiter and Uranus all in Sagittarius in the 11th house? You can see how they're all squaring again. The Mars, Venus, Virgo, 8th house stuff there. And if you have a look as well, you can also see Saturn, Sun, Pluto, Mercury all in the 10th house. And they're all in Scorpio apart from Pluto. And what I find really fascinating with these symbols is that the soul's journey has literally come to break away from the context of definition and the cultural identity that is linked with that definition, and to reintegrate itself in a new way. Saturn in a new phase to the Sun, Saturn in a new phase to Pluto, and so on and so forth. So there's this whole entire process which the soul has embarked its journey upon. And that started 13 years ago for me. In fact, Jupiter, if I'm not mistaken, was transiting my 9th house in Libra. And yesterday, which is the 5th of March 2016, I received a letter from the Swedish Migrations Office telling me that they have granted me citizenship here in Sweden. And that means that I am now able to actually not only travel around the world in a way that is recognized by the boundaries and border controls of the world, different to South Africa, simply because of South Africa's structure. And it's a really, really profound thing to see, because if you look at my astrology chart, can everybody see where the transiting moon is sitting right at the moment? It's on there, right? This was done earlier this morning. The transiting moon is sitting on top of my Pluto and Sun sign, all in the 10th house. And I have Jupiter also transiting my 10th house. And Mars has moved over my South Node, moved over my Uranus, moved over my Jupiter, and will now be approaching my Neptune. And what I find really fascinating about this as well is that Mars has also passed its first square to my natal Mars. And my Saturn and my Pluto is in my 12th house, as well as the South Node is in Sagittarius, Aquarius. The South Node of the transiting South Node is sitting there in my 1st house in Aquarius. And also, if you have a look, a load of the planets are sitting in my 2nd house in Pisces. And there is Uranus on the IC, literally on the 4th house cusp, your roots, where your identity was formed. The whole entire sequence of symbols over there, with me getting citizenship here in Sweden, was the soul's journey of literally completing a whole entire evolutionary cycle regarding the values, Sun, Neptune, Chiron, Venus, all in my 2nd house, related to the cultural definitions of the past, Uranus, Jupiter, South Node, Neptune, all in Sagittarius in the 11th, and how that was initiated by the symbols in the 10th house, and that the soul has literally come to, like I said, dissolve the context of its prior life dynamics regarding its identity and what identity and emotional context was formed, and how that has now literally been resolved. And look at the symbols. Literally, as I get this my Swedish passports, I went to go and do that all today. Look where the moon is. It's literally on top of that, reflecting the soul's journey. It's literally, it's like you can't even make this stuff up. It's that literal. And when you listen to the Daniel Jar's quote again, and how that process is working for us, that road that I'm here to meet, that path I'm here to experience, can be felt in two ways. I could feel completely disempowered and completely limited and completely fractured and lost and wandering the context of my existence, thinking that whatever's occurring for me right now here as I live in Sweden, because you must remember as well that, you know how you saw my sun sign, my moon sign in Gemini in the 5th house? Like, Sweden, first language is not English, it's Swedish. So not only am I now in a country integrating with another language, as much as many of you have got your own stories to tell as well, but there is a process of identifying with a new language. And what does that mean? Just as my children are integrating into the society from the age of 0, that whole entire path that was set out 13 years ago is now coming to this fruition, and it's reaching a point in which the new journey for me is literally about to take place. And you saw I had Pluto 29 degrees. All of my other symbols were literally in a completion phase as well. Planets on my south node. And if you remember the video that I created where I was talking about in the subscriber chart reading, that there's these planets that are, when you got in the south node, the soul comes into this lifetime with something to review and look at and move through and emotionally understand, and then to move beyond. And this is the context of belief, right? A culture is Sagittarius. And the identity linked with the culture has literally formed in my life. Unfortunately, because of the Mars Venus in the 8th house, and it's in Virgo and it squares Uranus and stuff, and all of this stuff in Pluto, part of me has to recognize the loss or abandonment of the identity that was once linked with my soul's journey before. My brother and sister still live there, and they still obviously deeply, deeply feel that loss. They feel that abandonment. They feel that separation. They feel that distance. And so even though I'm still on the path of doing what the soul wants to do, and that I have the Scorpio in my chart, I'm still witnessing a loss, abandonment, betrayal within the context of their lives. And their own story has got similar patterns in a different way. But the point is that by understanding those karmic complexes, I can process empathy. And processing empathy allows us to connect versus project through pain. And there's another beautiful observation with regards to healing this process, is how we meet it. How we can meet the sadness that can come with our karmic complexes, and how we can meet the rejoicing of these karmic complexes as well. You know, in my solar return chart, I have the moon and Pluto in my 10th house in Capricorn in a balsamic phase, i.e. completion cycle. And if you notice, not only is raising vibrations been shifting into newer and different ways of experiencing itself and the way I structure my own work, but also the identity linked with the culture that was before is now done. I now have a new identity. And that new identity with Uranus on the 4th house is literally brought that awareness, and you can process it and you can see how that's working. And the key here is not the astrology. It is the nature of the soul's journey and the interconnectedness to remind us of our unity, and that this process is occurring through us and for us. Okay, guys. Thank you very much for letting me share this video with you. I truly hope that it inspired you on some levels. I would love to hear your comments in the description. I'd love to hear what you have to say. It was an honor to share these feelings towards this process for you, and to share with you this upcoming travel to the States, and of course remind us of the deeper path, and to show up in a way that also represents the astrology in my chart, which is the 10th house. Like, I want to show up and say, hey guys, like, look, there is this deeper process that's occurring for us. And if we can recognize that within us, we can also merge with the soul, Pluto, and allow for a transmutation of our experience to occur. And that's where my sun sign sits in Scorpio, transmutation. Okay. Thanks very much for this this opportunity to have your attention. I deeply appreciate it. I don't know, there might be some videos coming out this week. I'm not entirely sure. I got to check my schedule. But if I don't, I'm excited to speak to you and hear from you next. Other than that, have a wonderful week.